Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Well, less than 2 weeks now till our first classic fresh drops the Season of Mastery. Much conversation has been happening around the changes Blizzard have made, what's going to be good, what's going to be bad, who is this fresh even for, should I play, what class is going to be best, but a few topics have risen to the surface, namely 1. Buff the underperforming specializations, and 2. People are asking for world buffs in one way or another to be reintegrated back into Classic as a core part of the experience. Let's start off with class balance. To be honest, I don't even want Blizzard to think about imagining trying to balance every class in the game in the space of less than 2 weeks. This would be an enormous endeavor to go through, to gradually put updates on the beta and test them, push the levels up a bit more, test them again, make sure everything's working, make sure not anything's too far out of whack. After all, combat is one of the most important parts of the game. However, adjusting mana costs following the raid testing would be something that I think would help out considerably. It's really not going to make any huge differences to performance, but at least you can perform and press your buttons for the entire duration of a fight. Unless that is you consider performing being chugging major mana pots and dark runes constantly and casting rank 4 of a spell to fill the gaps in between. I don't really. If they were to go through with any major class changes, I've heard criticisms on that as well, in that it would change the experience of vanilla massively. Of course, many classes look very simple. If you see any of my Warlock footage from vanilla, I'm pressing Shadow Bolt. If you look at TBC, I'm still pressing Shadow Bolt. But there is a lot of depth to them, and the actual idea of considerable changes may happen in a future season. I've seen some arguments against changes too, as in, well, we're not playing vanilla anymore. If you want consistent changes which are made to your class and spec, there's something for that, and it's called retail. There hasn't been many class changes since Legion. It's all just stuff which is tacked on the side now as temporary power. I feel as though people saying this are really missing the point about what makes people unhappy about retail, because they haven't played it in such a long time. It's not so much about the classes themselves, so much as the hoops you have to jump through to not even just remain competitive, but relatively up to date. The other point people make regarding big change is that it would impact PvP hugely, which is an area that I think attracts a lot of the classic purists, and would also, oh, sorry, let me stop you there, Rogue has just CC'd me for an entire minute, and my PvP trinket cannot break the CC chain. 3 mages with sappers deleted my raid within the space of 3 global cooldowns, and I got a little too close to a Tauren Elemental Shaman and they removed me from existence in a quick Warstorm Elemental Mastery combo. Do all of these things have counterplay? Some of them do. Are all of them kind of OP? Yeah, I would say so. And that's before we talk about consumables or engineering, which have completely unmitigated use throughout all PvP aspects of the game. I don't expect it to be balanced. It's certainly not balanced at the moment, so why not put a few more changes in there and see what happens? Add a bit more unbalance and abilities into the mix. Also, and I'm going to be saying this a lot, it is seasonal. It's not going to be there forever. This is why I think minor class changes for this season, like mana costs, are good and have merit. Major ones would be rushed at this point in time. Let's probably leave that for the next fresh. But it's not just class changes that have been a wide talking point. People are actually asking for world buffs to be put back into the game one way or another. Now, for me, world buffs in Season of Mastery make absolutely no sense whatsoever, and quite literally defeat the point of what Blizzard are going for in the season. Blizzard themselves, and I quote from a blue post here, say, "The main goal for the Season of Mastery is to provide a WoW Classic experience that brings about faster progression and more challenging content. This is our core design pillar that speaks to many of the changes we're testing in the beta. You can't have more challenging content and then next to that, oh yeah, but my character can be about 30% or so stronger, depending if they have world buffs or not." They also comment on loot on the updated cadence, saying, "We feel as though loot scarcity was an important part of what made the original World of Warcraft challenging and hope to recreate that feeling. Of course, we'll be watching this closely and are open to adjustments here if we identify a need." To be honest, back in actual vanilla, they did have gear progression on top of this back then, which exacerbated the issue because, well, a lot of gear was just really garbage back then. So what's with the deal about world buffs being taken away and suddenly people are saying, no, that was what made vanilla vanilla? Well, as somebody who got world buffs for every single raid in Classic, what happens when I have them is when I press my Shadow Bolt button and it hits an enemy, it makes a bigger number appear on my screen. That's about it, really. Also, I've noticed a rather striking correlation between people in favor of world buffs and their forum avatar being a level 60 human or orc warrior in tier 2.5 shoulders. but that's probably just a coincidence. People like to blast, have raids to be quick 1 or 2 time events per week, to hold down the heroic strike key for 2 hours a week, while saying the word pomper and big dick at least 20 times per hour. And I get it, it looks fun to be honest. Also, this goes for the speedrun side of the game. No world buff severely upsets the established meta and the scarcity of speedruns. In Classic, you have 2 runs per Dark Moon Fair week. That's it. It made it into a proper event which had build-up, planning, anticipation, execution. You fail? See you next circus. With TBC, you can speedrun each raid each week if you really want, and that takes something away from it. But at the same time, the lack of exploration around it adds something on top to it, which I don't think is going to be fully discovered in Season of Mastery, because a no-bus category existed on Warcraft logs for Classic. It just really wasn't popular at all. When, for example, just last week, a guild in the Burning Crusade in Europe called None of the Above got what is now the 2nd world fastest speedrun of SSC, and they used 6 warrior DPS total. Yep, 6 warrior DPS. The class you struggled to get a raid spot with, the DPS you were told is going to underperform, is now being as stacked as shamans in one of the best speedruns in the world. They were recently beat by a comp using 8 warlocks, but what they did definitely defied expectations. Something like this could happen for Classic Season of Mastery. I just don't think the speedrun fans are going to give it the time of day because of how fun world buff warriors are, and that's just the way it is, it seems. But at the same time, once a new tier is out, would you say you've mastered the old one? That is, if you've completed it, I suppose, without world buffs, keeping current tiers as the one with no world buffs at all, and allowing buffs in older ones to blast and collect some perps, would be kind of like a catch-up mechanic for guilds struggling on older content as well. The Chronoboon also exists in Season of Mastery as well, by the way, and I felt as though that was a fine solution to world buffs and forced raid logging in Classic. It's just that Blizzard's vision on the season is quite clear. Make current content more challenging and faster paced. Is it really going to be hard for competitive guilds to clear? No, simply put, but it will definitely move the goalposts on expectations out of the encounters for sure, and that's even before we get to Blackwound Lair, AQ40, or imagine a buff Nax with no world buffs. How will Blizzard approach later raids? They definitely already go up in difficulty baseline. How much extra is going to be piled on top of that? One last thing then, consumables. In the beta at the moment, things are a little warped as for who is best at what, because people are going through more consumes in a few hours of Molten Core than the first few clears in the world of Nax in Classic. Blizzard already said they're going to be buffing nodes from herbing or mining in the game. This should definitely help if it's done to a high enough degree, because if Season of Mastery just turns into you need to farm constantly like it's a second job to be able to bring enough consumables for a smooth clear, then that's going to end up being a problem, especially when some very important potion materials are not from herbs or mining, stuff like elemental earth or fire, which are from, well, elementals. I mean, Flask of Supreme Power in Classic is 150 spell damage. That's more spell damage than the spell power flasks in Wrath of the Lich King. Perhaps Black Lotus should work as Fel Lotus do in TBC, where they can be obtained from any herb throughout the land. Perhaps just the more high-level herbs in Classic, or work as Arcane Crystals do, where each herb you pick has a small chance to give you them. I hope certain specs get some mana cost reductions before things go live. World buffs via the Chronoboon in older raid content might be interesting, but it might just remind you of how much you miss having them in their current tier. And consumables, you're gonna need a lot. I hope there is enough without making it feel like a second job. Let me know your thoughts on it all. Season of Mastery has been interesting to follow. I've got more content on it planned, especially looking at what might the future hold when you compare it to what's been done on EverQuest, where our current producer on Classic used to be. That's about it though. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I shall see you all in the next one very soon.